Hi, this is Jerry with Mindfully Gay, and I've got Nick and John here. Welcome today. Um, it's actually on the eve of October, which means we're close to Halloween.
Yay.
But we know this will air sometime in November. And a topic that it comes up repeatedly in my office that I think would be really great for us to have a conversation about is holiday survival tips. Because holidays, especially Thanksgiving and of course Christmas, and any of the other holidays that are kind of associated tend to draw family in. And especially around in December, there's a lot of religious connotations with all these holidays.
True.
And one thing that I repeatedly see and hear is people like, how do I navigate my family obligations with the sense of who I am and my identity? I often see couples who feel like they have to go separate paths because maybe one partner is not welcome at the home of another partner,
Right.
because we don't accept you as being gay or queer. There's a lot of dynamics that play out around the holidays. And I see a couple of things happen. I think it can really stress out relationships, right? Because one partner may be more out than the other, may have better family support and nurturance. I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to go and be compliant and fit into an environment that doesn't necessarily resonate with their authenticity.
Right.
So I'm just trying to preface this. You guys can jump in at any time. But yeah, I think having a candid conversation about how do we navigate the holidays?
Right.
How do we negotiate within ourselves and show up in such a way that we don't feel compromised?
Negotiation, that's
Yeah.
the word, right?
Yeah.
And it's tough. I'm sitting here thinking about, I'm fortunate in that, everything you're saying, I can relate to, understand essentially through the lens of friends that I have that are
Right.
dealing with it, and mostly couples. And so, even thinking about people that are single having to negotiate this with themselves and how they deal with it. And, I'm grateful that I have the partner that I do for when things like that happen. Like I said, for the most part, there's not a lot of negotiation. We are who we are with family, and we're fortunate in that sense. But every now and then some things happen, where we have to, I don't know, decide to be different or something. But I couldn't imagine having to do it on my own. I don't know. It's tough to I think that if I had to negotiate on my own, I would fail. I don't think I would drink. I would do something like that to try to deal with it. And I don't like saying that, but I know that that's probably what would happen. And that's what has happened, I guess, in some degrees. I think I've told you guys the story about when Cole and I first came back here. My mother was hosting family reunion. There were 109 people in that house.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, Xanax came with me.
Yeah, that in and of itself would justify the drinking.
Well, but then it was then, the family portraits that were happening in the church down the street, and everyone's looking at us while we're together. And it was like literally the whole family's there watching John and I sit for portraits. Like it was very very tough to deal with. Like they're literally watching us be together. But anyway, but yeah, Xanax had to happen on that one. And that's just kind of how I dealt with it. And so, yeah, I think if I had to deal with this on my own, I guess I'm still kind of worried that I couldn't negotiate through all those things. Cause I know the stuff you're talking about. And like I said, I'm fortunate that I have a partner that I don't really have to, but I feel for those that have to go at it alone, in a sense, on their own. It's tough.
I think I want to throw this in before we keep going. I think this November in particular is going to be a little bit more challenging because it's election year. And, the masters of politicians have figured out how to really create division around identity and religious politics.
Yeah.
So that's even an extra influence
For
on what we're
sure,
talking about.
It really does.
You were going to say something.
Well, I'm just thinking, there are so many scenarios that come up in regards to being gay during the holidays, being single, being in a couple, being out, being in the closet. I mean, just how, like you're saying, negotiating, coping. I mean, just how one has to show up.
And so guarded how you show yourself, present yourself. Yeah. Exhausting to have to, sorry. Keep going.
Just like the process of coming out or any other, I think lots of things that we've talked about, whether it's religion or masculinity, all the things we've talked about, there's some level of, I got to think about this. I need to contend, with something that's kind of challenging and difficult. Whether you're single, whether you're in a couple, out, not out, what kind of relationship do you have with your family? Whether you're out or not, maybe you have a great relationship and it doesn't matter. You can just kind of show up and be yourself. But maybe there's something that you've got to hide or keep under wraps, or where you just can't show up, fully. Politics, like you said, just with the election year, and that just adds another piece to it. Religion, spirituality, another component, and a lot to deal with. Yeah. I think, and like you said, you probably see that a lot, walking through your office doors, and certainly when I was working as a therapist, the holidays were a tough time for folks.
Yeah. It can make or break relationships. I've seen people kind of reach a point of saying, yeah, I'm not going to do this again. Mm-hmm. And they break up over it.
Yeah.
This feels like a really complex discussion. I think we should change topics.
It is complex. And how can we approach this? I think it's good that we acknowledge that it is complex, that there are so many scenarios, and maybe you have your unique situation. I'm talking to the listener in regards to this, and then as we lay out maybe a few of these examples, how you might deal with it, or even how we've dealt with some of these complexities.
Well, and as we're talking, we're amateur podcasters, but I think we've kind of figured out that the podcast it's bigger than Salt Lake City. Like, I know there's people around the country who are listening to us, around the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm thinking about the different kind of holidays and events. And
true.
And so I almost want to apologize that we're staying really focused on what we're familiar with. But hopefully what we talk about could be helpful in whatever circumstance the listener is participating. Mm-hmm. But last night I had a really beautiful experience where, so my husband and I throughout the years have had young gay folks who have come to live with us. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, we've kind of been like gay daddies. Yeah. In that I think we provided some sense of structure and a home base and could have conversations with these folks. And one of them got married yesterday. Mm. And I won't say his name, but we had a lot of interaction with him, trying to kind of help him shape up and get focused. And, here he is at this point in his life. He's a respectable young man. He has a great career, and he just married a great man. And I officiated the wedding. Mm. And what I know about both of them is they both came from they both came from very religious families, and one being LDS. And when I was standing up there was about 150 to 200 people in the audience. Clearly, this very mixed group of gay men, very handsome gay men, religious family members. Mm-hmm. It was very, very eclectic. And I just made the observation. I said, 20 years ago, this would not be possible. 20 years ago, we were still fighting about whether couples could put a wedding announcement in the newspaper. Right? Remember the controversy that would create? Yeah. And yet today, we're having this really remarkable wedding with a very eclectic group of people. And how powerful that was to just be able to stand up and witness that. And I know in talking to these young men that their families have had to really challenge their own personal ideologies.
Yes.
And really kind of examine themselves in the context of their religion in relationship with their child.
Yes.
And what I admired about the young man that we officiated for yesterday, and when I met with the couple about the wedding ceremony, we talked about how do we create a ceremony that would not necessarily be in their face, but that would be supportive and nurturing of what the grooms needed, what the community needed, and what the family could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was very introspective. I thought it was very mindful that they could approach it that way.
Yeah.
And what I know after the ceremony is several people from both of the families came up, complimented the service, appreciated, and actually a lot of them said that they were moved by tears. And the thing that came out frequently was from them is this sense of love really is universal. And I'm putting that out there partly to suggest that I sometimes think the conflict that we have with family members is the anticipation of rejection and the forecasting of a negative experience, or that I somehow am responsible for everyone else's comfort.
Yes.
No, you're totally just pulling it right out of my brain. It's exactly it.
Right.
I'm sorry, I just have to say, like, that story. So what I just said, I'm talking about thinking I would fail if I were on my own, especially. Like, I don't know how I would do it on my own, how I would go into it on my own. But then hearing that, exactly that it was this thoughtful synthesis of what people could relate to, and they were appreciative of it. A story like that helps me. You're absolutely right. In that moment when I was thinking about you, John. I was thinking about if I didn't have a partner and I was on my own and I had to do that shit. Like, and I had to present myself in a way so it would work for them, and how much I would resent doing that. And like, I'm old enough now, what am I doing? Like, these are the things I would start doing. But definitely that narrative of, I'm anticipating so much conflict. I'm just anticipating so much that I'm getting so angry at it. This is what happened in 2016 with Trump, and I had to stop watching news because it was fueling arguments I was having with my father that were never even happening. But I was so angry because he'd lined up with that side of things. But it's the anticipation voice is wild sometimes, and I guess it's born from experience of growing up and seeing just some nasty shit and knowing that can happen, but not allowing for the fact that a synthesis of things can happen that everyone appreciates, and people can come up in tears and say that they liked how much they felt it or were moved by it. And it's hard. It is very hard in these holiday times to remember that we actually are living in a time where a lot has changed for the better. And it is even at times, if it's weird right now, but it does have to swing this way. All this political shit did have to happen, unfortunately, because of this grand information age we're living in now. It had to get there so we can all have that as an example to be like, see, this is what happens. And so it's suspending that for a little bit and just trying to remember that, just like you said, the newspaper, like, there was a time that would have gotten your house burned to the ground, right? But now it's so different. And that is very helpful to me just in that moment when I was trying to think, if I were single and having to go do this, then I would be drinking. It's just the only way I could do it. And it's different now because I'm thinking about the examples you gave, and it was very helpful to remember that a lot has changed. I'm not responsible for everyone being fucking happy. I need to be responsible for myself to be happy.
That's it. And I know that's been my personal experience as far as, I have felt, so different, from everyone else. And because I'm gay, and I'm not sure how all folks feel about that, especially with family members, and so it became some kind of storyline for me, even as a kid, that, okay, I need to show up as little John and be this cute little kid and do all the right things to make everyone else happy. And that became my narrative through a lot of my early years, even my adult years. Like, okay, I got to show up a certain way because I have to make sure that you feel good, that you're okay, you're going to be okay, and I'm not going to create this catastrophe or disaster or that anticipatory effect of things are going to go wrong, or we're going to have different ideas and different perspectives on things, and make everything bad and awful. And there's going to be arguments and avoid conflict or create conflict. It's like, nope, I'm gonna have to put on this hat and this mask and these jeans and show up this way so that you're okay.
Yeah.
But I like what you said, Jerry, because even with that, because I'm sure people might be dealing with that kind of thing right now, is something that I later, much later in life, really had to dig deep to find, especially with my relationship with my mother, that my mom's a worrier. And so I've got to always feel like I've got to say and do the right thing so she doesn't worry, right? But what I understand about my mother is that she says these things like, John, be careful, it's because she loves me.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
When you get down to the core of it all, it is about love. That's something that we can relate to and relate with. Like, oh, all this other stuff is just stuff and fluff. And she's saying these things because she loves me.
But and knowing that has made it feel better for you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's a very different thing now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the device that triggers like, oh God, what have I done wrong to give her worry? I got to walk this line so she's not going to have. No, she's just expressing her love. That's just how she's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, in the day when I would get phone calls from parents, I'd get a phone call that would be like, I think my kid is gay and it just terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, what is that about?
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to two things. I'm afraid they're going to get AIDS
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to get bashed.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much that they're gay.
No.
It was,
Worried for the
I'm
sake.
worried about the consequences.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think let's see if I can frame this up, right? So I know I'm going to a family event. I may be going to some event or family gathering, and you kind of bring this up. How do you find the capacity, or is it necessary to find the capacity to show up authentically?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? And because I think what happens is people feel like like you said, they have to play a particular role.
Mm-hmm.
They're angry and resentful because of that role.
Yeah.
In many cases, I don't know that it's necessary.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
But we create an anxiety around that, and I wonder how do we coach folks, or is it ethical and relevant to coach folks to find their more authentic space when they're with people like this?
But okay, so if I can, but I think it's kind of just happening right now in this moment, because I initially, when you threw that down, and I started thinking, okay, like I said, got a partner right now. The holidays have been pretty solid for the most part. But if I were on my own, how much of a challenge that would be for me. And then I just started going through the swarm of all the what ifs, and they're negative, and they're all. And so I think something that just in this period now talking has helped me be better at processing all this is just kind of stepping out of it for a second and realizing, wait, she's just telling me that she loves me. Mm-hmm. Like it's just a shift in how you're interpreting what you think others are going to do or what they are actually doing. It's taking time to pause and breathe. Yeah. And before you get worked up in that vortex of, okay, I got to do this before I get out the door. It's a shift in how you're approaching it's just a shift in your mindset and how you're approaching the event. And maybe it's not so much a challenge that you have to present yourself as authentic, but it's at least it's a way in which you can relieve yourself of that stuff that's making you not authentic. And maybe with that, you just kind of get to be, you can be who you are, right? If that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense to me. It sounds like you can be a little more comfortable.
Comfortable.
That if you kind of do a little pre-work, before the event, what came to mind was, well, if Aunt Agnes is going to say this and act like this, you just kind of know her personality. And if that's kind of a trigger for you or whatever, but maybe she's saying it because of X, Y, and Z. And if you have that understanding, so she's not saying that because she hates me or trying to, get at me. That's just how she is. And so if you can go in knowing how people might act or respond or speak, you might be able to go in more with that ease. And like you said, and not have that, reactionary effect.
And no, entirely. Like it's an invitation. You have permission.
Yes.
You have permission to just slow it down. I mean, we gays, especially the older ones, definitely, we all have we all got that PTSD. We all have that. My father hates me. I've made my father mad. Everyone in school hates me. It's all of that stuff that we were we developed this ability as we grew up, and it's very hard to disengage with it. But interestingly enough, you're saying it but there's something about family. There's something about family dynamic that's different than the outside world. And maybe it's a better opportunity to practice this, right?
Yeah.
It's less frightening as opposed to going, I can't think of what another opportunity, but you have, you've got family there. Yeah, Aunt Agnes might have acted a fool in the past, but we're different now. We're coming to this differently, and we're going to maybe give her a little bit more space or a little bit benefit of the doubt, whatever it may be, so that we're not fueling the crazy inside,
right? And
we want to, take her wig off. So, so I think that, what I think we're saying is that, we got to recognize that we've been battered around in the past, and we got some wounds for that, but we do have the ability to talk about it like this, to take pause, and there's an opportunity to practice. That's what this is. These holidays that are coming up, these family events, maybe instead of it being something that is riddled with anxiety and I've got to have a few shots to get through it, maybe take pause, and maybe through an effort of showing up and loving yourself more, you realize it's an opportunity to practice, to practice something different, to practice knowing that you don't have to make everyone happy. It's the Mother Teresa complex, right? Where you feel so damn guilty for being gay that you got to go around making sure that everyone's so happy so they don't feel whatever. Right. You don't have to do that. And in fact, in this safer environment, because it is family, you have a place that you can hopefully just learn to be more comfortable in.
Yeah. And you end up showing up more authentically, I think.
Yes.
Not that you have to say, hey, I'm gay. You don't have to declare something like that. But just because you're just more calm in the situation, you're handling it well, you're not overreacting or just reacting. You're just yourself.
Mm-hmm. Look, the concept of self-esteem, it's interesting. Most people are striving for some sense of self-esteem. Mm-hmm. But the concept of self-esteem is independent of seeking validation.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Right? And so isn't it interesting that we keep externalizing the need for validation as if it's going to somehow get me somewhere. Mm-hmm. When ultimately I have to find my own voice, my own way of being. And that may mean separating myself from toxic people in situations.
Right.
That may mean setting up psychic and psychological and emotional boundaries with people. Mm-hmm. Like being able to say, this is your stuff and not mine.
Right.
I think one of the ingenious mechanisms of homophobia is the homophobes become quite explicit and expert in their ability to externalize their own misogyny. And so it becomes this process of trying to demean you, but it's only effective if I'm inviting the, I don't want to say inviting, but if I hear it and accept it and feel responsible for it.
Yeah. Engage it, let it do something. Yeah. It's a stimulus.
So here's a question I think could be stimulating. Here we are on the eve of an election, and I hear frequently, all the time, you see it everywhere in social media, right? If you don't agree with me, just go ahead and unfriend me. If you're going to belong to that religion or participate in that religion, how can you do that because you no longer love me or support me? If you believe in that candidate, I can't have you a part of my life. Now, I just talked about the issue of toxicity. We do know that people engage in belief systems that are very anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-everything. Fun. How do we navigate? Like, at what point do we draw lines in relationships? And how does that then end? Like, how do we navigate that kind of mentality? Because it is a mentality that's very prevalent out there. Mm-hmm. If you're doing this, then you're doing it against me.
But I think, if I can, it's a real challenge, because what you have to challenge yourself with as the person that is saying, if you believe this, then unfriend, is that what you think they believe about you is not what they believe, but that's what you think that they think. That's what I thought my dad voting Trump meant. I've had he doesn't believe that there's been anything anti-LGBTQ from that administration, and it's because of how the diet of information that he gets from various places that they're kind of skillful at not. I mean, it's essentially Fox News. They're pretty good about keeping not attacking gay agenda, but everything else is. But that's just how they're presenting. So my dad's understanding of everything is through the lens of Sean Hannity, sure. But my understanding of why my dad votes for Trump is something different, it's all based on that. Crap, everyone hates me because I'm gay, blah blah blah. You're voting against everything for me. How could you? You're my father. That's not what he's doing at all. Mm-hmm. That's not at all what he's doing. In fact, he believes that there's nothing wrong going with that administration in terms of our rights. He doesn't think there's any problem because he's not hearing of them. Mm-hmm. And so I think what I'm getting at is how your question, Jerry, is how do you, in those situations where you're like, well, if you're going to vote for this or you're doing that, then you need to unfriend me. Again, it's tough, but it is in a way, it's like it's that you put on that armor, you're dragging around that bag of whatever, look at what they did to me. And you feel like, I know I do. I struggle with this. I feel like I regret that I let myself down so much when I was younger by not standing up for myself. And so now I'm hyper aggressive about it. And it's troubling because I'll do that. I'll project onto this one and that one that I know that they just hate me because I'm a fag. I know that they're against my rights or whatever. And so, it gets me worked up and angry. And I feel like I'm standing up. And this is the fucked up part, is I feel like I'm standing up for myself when I confront this person who has no idea what I'm going on in my mind, and they think I'm crazy. But I feel validated because I'm standing up for myself. You fucking hate me. You don't know it, but I do. And it's crazy, but that is kind of what starts happening. And so back to this situation of, if you're going to vote for that, you need to unfriend me. I think you need to understand that, maybe your perception is off a little bit. It's still important. You got to show up for yourself, because you probably are now when you didn't in the past, and you can't let that happen again. You have to protect yourself, but it does take some work to just think that maybe what you're thinking of why their why behind it, maybe it's not true, maybe it's not accurate, and maybe a conversation would be better, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm struggling with your decision to support this, and this is why, and what do you think about that? Mm-hmm. That type of being able to have a conversation like, my God, that's what I should have done. I know. It's so hard to do this stuff, but I know if I would have had a talk with my father years ago about Trump, he would understand. I know he would. We spent time with him all the time. They're great. I still run this narrative that he's against me and it's dumb and I've got to address it, but I just don't have the energy right now, I feel, to have the conversation with him. But I think that that's what it is, Jerry. In those moments, don't give up on the person. If they mean something to you, then it's worth a conversation, right? It's worth a conversation to explain how you feel.
I think so too, and I love that you went that direction with that, Nick, because I think the online stuff, if you're seeing those things, I don't know how I would negotiate that per se online, because I don't engage with people like that online, because it's just words on, it's digital,
Yeah.
and not personal.
Yeah.
If I had my preference, it would be in person.
Yeah.
And I know the person. And the other caveat I would want, and I think I would need, and to be able to have a conversation like that, is that there can be a dialogue. It's, between two people, and we can hear each other and really listen to each other, right? So that we can find, yes, we may have different political views, and here's why, but here's our common ground.
Yeah.
We can find our common ground. Because I have a really close friend. I've known him for years and years. And we have different political points of view, very strongly, but almost polar opposites. But we found another way to connect. and we don't have to talk about politics. It's not really part of our relationship and our connection. And if we can do that with family members, I think too, whether it's religion or politics or whatever, what's our common ground here? And can we have it's a two-way street. Can we have a conversation about this?
Right.
And so I think it does. So I think we're saying two things then, at least for the people that are listening, that are having anxiety about the holidays that are coming upon them. Like we're trying to suggest there's a couple of things that can happen. First, just internally on your own, take pause and at least pull in the idea that maybe what you're cooking up in your mind about how everything's going to go horribly is not accurate. And maybe that is because you've had some PTSD, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But you can rise above it. You do have that within you to do it. And you can take the time to contemplate and think. Moreover, to go even further, you can have a conversation with a family person. You can say, Mom, you say be careful all the time, and I just have to tell you that I hear it this way, and it makes me feel this sort of way, and I want to know what you think about it, because it really matters to me what you think. And those conversations like that, I mean, think about, as opposed to hitting the bottle before you go over to Aunt Patty's,
Right.
Instead you've had a conversation, you're like, wow, I'm actually kind of looking forward to going and playing cards for 6 hours or whatever. Like, it's different now. And it's because you just took the time to either internally just take pause and do a little bit of work, or you actually then had a conversation with Aunt Patty or whoever it was.
Yeah.
And things are they've shifted. And
yeah. And I have to say, I did have that conversation with my mom just like that. Mom, when you say this, I react this way. And once we got into the dialogue and she said, well, I'm your mother. I worry. I love you.
This is Mom.
I'm your mother.
This is my language.
Yeah, this is my language, exactly. And once it finally seeped in, and I have to say, a weight lifted. Weight lifted. Yeah. It just meant, of course. and so it just made it so much lighter and easier.
And easier, maybe even think about how it sets the stage for the next conversations with other family members that might need to happen, right? I mean, it does. Maybe it's a neuroplasticity thing. I don't know, but it does. You've done that with Mom, and that was like, okay, feels good. And then maybe Aunt Patty's next, or whatever it needs to be. But yeah, I hear you. And think about too, John, if your mother was sensitive to how you were behaving up until that conversation, and maybe things she was thinking and she was concerned, and then maybe there was a weight lifted for her too, right?
Yeah.
I'm Nick, you said something earlier, and I've been sitting here kind of pondering it.
You want to do shots of vodka? Is that it?
Well, you know how that works. It only takes a shot. But as you were saying it, and as I've been pondering it, I'm thinking, I sometimes think that you're onto something without maybe fully realizing it, because I heard you say something like the regret I carry for not having defended myself at an earlier age, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not applying this directly to you, but kind of an archetype that kind of plays out in our community is that of victim and martyr, right? Where, and it's a very legitimate beginning, right? Because we see the violence, we see the disparities, we see the judicial system operate against us. We hear politicians talk their rhetoric, right? And you can't help but to internalize that.
Sure.
Or to at least experience it at some level. And I'm thinking at one point in my career, I used to do a lot of work where people who were victims of violent crime would come to me, and the idea was to kind of prepare them to be able to testify.
Oh, wow.
And every victim of whatever the heinous crime, probably the biggest thing that they would get hung up on is regret.
Yeah.
I should have done this. If I had just listened to my intuition, I knew something was off. But it's interesting how in that place of defenselessness, if you will, that place of feeling defenseless, that many people kind of internalize that as their responsibility. They did something to invite the crime.
Right.
And when I think about that dynamic, and I think about what you said, and how many times I've heard that, like in my office, right? If I had just come out sooner, if I had just done this, if I had, right? It's a series of regrets where we're trying to compensate for a place where we had absolutely no power.
That's hard to remember that part, though. But yes, you're right.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Though.
That, right, we have experienced systemic oppression. We have experienced religious oppression, right? Our identities are formulated in that space. When we're in the closet, we hear what we think our family members really believe. But I can tell you as a therapist that's worked with many, many parents that, first of all, if they could go back and change the dialogue, they would. But it isn't until the process of having a queer child becomes personal that they start to have to go into the process of questioning their faith, their ideas, their morals. Now, some people don't go there for whatever reason, right? But do you get where I'm going with all this? That if I could wave a magic wand, I would do what I could to shift us from that place of victim and to help us find the place of empowerment that exists within us today. Just like I even said this at the wedding last night, it's like for us to stand here today and to declare this relationship is a powerful statement to the universe that we are here, that we are powerful, that we exist. And we're not here carrying around the luggage of our past, but we're stepping in today and we are moving forward.
And so wait, if I can, let me say this. So then if I'm understanding correctly, it's hard to even say it, but instead of regret for that time, I need to understand to have gratitude for that time because it's empowered me. It's empowered me to be a defender, to be a protector of my community, I don't know. It feels better to not think about you really fucked up, Nick. You should have punched that kid. You should have done, whatever. And it's not that I'm grateful for that pain. But I guess I need to understand how to have gratitude that I can reflect on it and it not be a source of just further fuel for this fire of what I know people, the hatred that people have towards me or whatever. It's something different than it's something that I reflect on, and that happened, but it's made me, I don't know. I guess it's sharpened. I don't know how to say what it is. But yeah, and it's more awareness. It's something now. I guess it's helped with my perception now.
I met with a colleague yesterday for breakfast, and he said something really profound that I've been pondering. He said, transformation follows crucifixion. And that's a pretty powerful statement.
It really is.
Right? And when I kind of wanted to argue with him for a little bit, and I started thinking about these different experiences I've had in my life that have been challenging. And what I recognize is that the transformation, my capacity to show up differently, has always followed that formula.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into details, but Nick, I know that you show up for people, like in your coaching practice, from that place. It's almost as if you're training.
That's going to make me cry. That's true.
You're training those who have been vulnerable or see themselves in that vulnerable place. And you show up as coach, big brother, daddy, whatever, right? But you show up differently than the trainer who has never had to really fight for that identity.
I never thought about it like that.
I think as a social worker, just kind of pull this off you for a minute, I think about what motivates me in my work. And I think, I know how lonely and isolated that was to be in the closet. And if I can somehow facilitate, there's lots of places I could be a great social worker, but I love working with the queer community because it feeds little Jerry who was closeted, just like little Nick gets fed.
Yeah, exactly. This goes right back to recognizing our gay blessings, our gay gifts. This is a source of our power, the power that we have as gay individuals. We've been able to take these traumas and these crucifixions, these challenges in our lives, and reform them in a way that becomes empowering, not only for ourselves, but for the people we come in contact with. We become empowering because we were empowered by those early circumstances. But there was something, I think that's maybe just something inherent in our being that allowed us to have that transformation that we can now recognize and make these shifts. I'm just listening and witnessing Nick right here, just kind of, he's making a transformation right now. He's seeing this shift of, out of regret of a particular action into a recognition, an honesty, a gratitude, an awareness that I can now use, and I have been using to show up fully, to then uplift other people around us. That's our power. That's our gift. And to apply that to the holidays that we're stepping into, gosh, if you can kind of step into whatever trauma, whatever situation that you've been that you grew up in or grew up with, how has that empowered you? How has it shifted you? How has it transformed you to be who you are today, and to show up in that fullness? And that's your authenticity.
Well said. Very well said.
So I think going back to the family situation, not that every family gathering has to be a crucifixion.
No.
But I was just pondering, I've been out for a while. I don't know that I'm so deliberate about it today. And yet I can think of experiences just this last Labor Day where I thought, okay, I'll have this conversation with someone. It's almost like before I go into the event or the engagement, I kind of do this mental mantra of, this is who I am. This is me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to give this up.
Mm-mm.
I have worked too fucking hard to get here. And the trials and the challenges have all kind of created where I sit today. And so when I show up, I'm not willing to show up and be apologetic for what shows up.
Right.
And so that's kind of the mantra that runs through my head is I'm coming out of the closet was kind of like, no more apologies, no more living for your satisfaction. I live for my satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to share that with you because it is my gift.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we'll have family events and conversations about politics, and certainly about queer politics will come up. And a lot of times I sit and I'm listening and I'm really kind of trying to take in, like, how does this person really feel about it? And it's interesting, the dynamics of the conversation will always change. If I say, well, if you had a child, how would you feel about this?
Mm-hmm.
Or I will come forward and say, I just want you to hear that I believe these particular ideas, the byproduct is limiting my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk about rights. I'll just say my happiness, my capacity to have a full life is impacted by the positions that you take. And if they were to be realized. And I'm just very matter of fact, here's how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of borrow from the LDS playbook, bear your testimony. So I do.
So why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my experience with that. And it makes me wonder what kind of relationship I can have with you if you really believe that should be a byproduct of our experience.
Right, right.
But maybe the piece I'm offering is that we don't feel hostage in those situations, but that we're deliberately mindful about how we step into them and what we're bringing with us.
Right. This is reminding me of a story that I want to share with our audience, but share with you guys too. It's just based on just kind of that, how to prepare for kind of stepping into a situation. And I think this can work for, an individual, like a single person going to see their family. But I think it also can work, as a couple. Maybe you're going to go see the in-laws or, see folks or something like that. And to have that moment, take the time to kind of prep yourself. And then, if you have a partner, to, what's our game plan, kind of gig, so we can step in and maybe support each other if things kind of go awry or whatever the case may be. And the story I want to share is something I just learned not too long ago. But my mother and father were kind of prominent in Oakland in the mid 80s, because my father was president of this association. And so they would have to go to these functions, right? And they'd have to dress up and be tuxedo and the whole thing. And so here's this black couple that would have to go to these big old fancy dinners, right? And so before they would walk into the grand hotel place, they'd sit in the car and look at each other. It's like, well, you ready? We can do this. We got each other. Yeah, we can do this. And it was just a signal for them, because they knew what kind of backlash they were going to get. They would get the looks. Why are you here? Questioning. Just all kinds of stuff just based off of, you can guess. And so they just were able to support and lift each other up. And then be able to walk into those situations heads held high with grace. And they got the looks, they got the questions. Are you supposed to be here? Kind of thing, right? But they knew how to, they could just give a wink and a nudge to each other and go, we got this, and be fine, right? But that's something they had to deal with all the time. And I don't think that's any different from what we may have to deal with going into family situations or any situation, you know, if you have a partner, do we have each other's back? And, or if you're on your own, do a little internal inventory, right? I'm all right. I don't have to take care of them. I'm good. I believe what I believe. I don't have to compromise who I am. I'm good. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And step right in.
Yeah.
And that that type of conversation with yourself is really powerful. It's hard to do at first. Maybe it's hard to trust that you can support yourself in those times, but
Yeah.
it is an opportunity. Look at these holidays as they come up, especially if you're on your own. You have to go into these things, into the trenches. Look at them as opportunities to practice showing up for yourself. You know, worst case, you leave early because it just gets gnarly and you don't want to be there or whatever.
Yeah.
But definitely it's a gift to yourself. Instead of running that program, the crazy program that's making you feel crummy about yourself, pause it and have a conversation with yourself and love yourself and it will definitely help the entrance into that situation.
I think the other option too that I want to put on the table, and Bruce and I kind of do this too. We kind of have a eclectic. Our holidays tend to be very eclectic. So I call it Thanksgiving, but I know other people will refer to it as Friendsgiving.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And I think how we started doing it is we just started inviting folks that we just kind of recognized that maybe they didn't have family or connections otherwise, and we're just like, well, hey, why don't you come join us for Thanksgiving? And it kind of grew in that way. And a lot of times those events are more entertaining and fun,
Of course they are,
than the family events
Definitely.
because, right, there's a banter that comes with all of that. And we do the same thing with Christmas. Now we'll have whatever family members choose to come out to be with us, but we also like to include our friends. And people who would just benefit with just having some friendship and camaraderie around that time.
But that's what gays should always do, though. That's the perfect way. If you're hosting, of course family should be invited, but there's definitely going to be other family invited too. And that's how you kind of take control, right? You take control of the process, and instead of walking in and being like, oh my God, instead they're coming to you, and this is what family is, and this is how we kind of change the script or whatever. And yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a much I don't know, that just sounds like a much funner dinner party to me.
And I can attest to it. And I think Jerry and Bruce's Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners and holidays, I think, is a great example. Like, all y'all gays and all y'all folks in particular need to take note, because this is how a holiday can be. Yeah. Because there's no agenda.
Yeah.
It's casual. You're showing up, you're in your jeans, you can, take your shoes off. Come in your jammies. It's about the food. It's about just being together and laughter, and it's fun. It's relaxing.
No.
And I know the people that do show up, it's like, this is nice. This is so just, I can just kind of snuggle up in this chair and just have my thirds of roast beef and be good,
You don't serve roast beef.
Turkey and ham. And your famous Jell-O. No.
That was my grandma's. But yeah, and then I think the other piece we got to speak to, right, is I think there are some people who feel they're alienated from family. They may not have friends. Here's something I struggle with. It's interesting to me how many people feel like they don't have those friendship circles or those connections. And it's interesting, if we get a lot of correspondence with Mindfully Gay, it's interesting how many people I get text messages from or emails saying, I really want to be there, but I'm afraid. I have anxiety about being there. It's interesting. It's like the thing we're hungry the most for, we're equally terrified of. And I think about those folks who may feel somewhat isolated. And I really don't know what to say with them other than your story's not going to change until you turn the fucking page. I'm sorry, turn the page. and that you dare to show up, that you allow yourself to be received by an event, whether it's a talking circle or a Friendsgiving or whatever that is. Be willing to face the anxiety. Be willing to face there's an uncomfortable bridge of how do I get to know you, right? But once you cross that bridge, you may find that there's something there worth participating in and showing up for. And I think those folks that feel somewhat isolated, I don't know how to get the invitations out to them, but I know like we're talking about how to create opportunities around the holidays for folks to feel like they can come and have community. And I would encourage them to stay tuned to the website and our social media, because that's where we'll let folks know what's happening.
Absolutely. I want to add on to what you're saying, Jerry, because I think that is important. When you take that risk and cross the bridge, you might discover something quite phenomenal and amazing. And a lot of support on the other side,
right?
Whether it's one of our retreats or social events, it doesn't even have to be with us. I mean, if it's just wherever you are and those circles that you're interested in, but you feel like you're on the outskirts of it. But let me say this, because I think we said this a long time ago in one of our early podcasts. It's baby steps. It really is baby steps, and so there really isn't. Doesn't have to be the expectation that you're going to be at the at the base of the bridge and you're going to run right across. But just the fact that you're at the bridge and you're looking at it,
that's the
this is interesting, that you're just contemplating, that you're even listening to this podcast, that you maybe browsed our website, that you scrolled through our Instagram. That's something. That's a step. It really is. And I want you to give yourself credit for that. The baby steps do count. You might just listen to this podcast and that's your bridge crossing.
We're here.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
And it gives you some insight for later development and socialization and things like that. Just as it can be important to cross the bridge, I think it's just as important to be at the base of the bridge and looking at the potential.
And also remembering very much that you said it, it's such a nice thing to think about. It's support is on the other side. That's what's there. That's all that's there. That's what we're doing here it's support. It's if you're out there alone and you don't have anyone and you're listening, you have us, you have what we're talking about. And this is a chance for you to practice being social in a sense. At least listen to how the words that we're saying and the ideas that we're proposing and maybe some of the devices that you've never thought about trying for yourself before. But John's right. These events that we do are a place to practice. You'll have no regret. You won't have regret if you leave, if you come and it doesn't work out. There's no regret. You practiced, and it's a place of support. And I'll tell you, if you come to an event, find me. I mean, because I was someone that was very nervous and riddled with it and felt very isolated and alone and probably would never have done anything like this. But I'm different now, and I look forward to this, and I am that support for people now. And fuck. So that's, that especially those people that are out there alone, like that's what you have to remember is you're listening to us, you have us, and I hope that you come to our events.
That's coming right from his heart. And because if you do come to like a retreat or a social gathering or something and Nick is there, do go to him. Because because it can be scary, anxiety provoking to walk in this group. It's like all these people,
Yeah.
but maybe you'll find someone, or
Yeah.
there's been that open invitation, like from Nick
Yeah.
or me or someone, Jerry, someone in the group, and have that one-on-one. And maybe that's all you need.
Most definitely. Definitely. Think of how powerful that would be to just know that you can come up to someone and say, look, I'm freaking out right now that I'm here. I need to just sit and can we just talk? Of course, that's what it is. That it would be my joy to have that conversation with someone.
Well, and recognize too, Cole will be there, and he's Mr. Hospitality. Bruce as well,
everyone,
which people haven't met, but when you come in the house, you'll meet them.
And can I say also, the people that are coming regularly, we've minted new people, right? These are people. These are support people. These were people that were once very anxious, and now they're different, and they want to be in service to those that might be anxious. Like it's just a room filled with that people at different stages of it all, but it's all about transformation. It's all about that. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so how are we feeling?
Feeling, I wasn't sure how we were going to approach this topic.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Like, what tips can I give about, about the holidays? I don't know.
Right. I have the hip flask on me still, but we didn't open it.
Did I make the dinner rolls correctly?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
But isn't it interesting? There's kind of a theme with most of the things we end up talking about. Ultimately, it comes down to that. What is my personal narrative? And it doesn't matter what age you are, what your experience is, like, right? Everything is an invitation to come back to self. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm good. I need to go lift weights now.
Okay.
Well, we wish you all wonderful holidays, whatever you may be celebrating this year, and a great thank you to all of you for listening and being a part of the Mindfully Gay family here in the podcast. As we get closer to the later holidays and into the new year, we just want to wish you all the best and continue showing up, and we really enjoy that. So thank you. We'll see you next time on the Mindfully Gay podcast. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.